Hi, Martine.
Hi, Carolyn.
How are you today?
Great.
Good. Thank you for agreeing to go through an interview about your company and the situation we're in right now and travel in the future. So, as just a bit of introduction to those who don't know Martine or her company Goût et Voyage, it's a boutique travel company. And normally at this time of year, Martine and I would probably be sitting down to lunch with a glass of rosé, talking about how her last tour was and her upcoming tour in Tuscany, and maybe her new tours in the future, because she's always inventing new ones. But of course, we are not. So we're here by Zoom in two parts of the continent. As a bit of background on Martine, she was born in France, speaks 5 languages, the first of which was French. She has an MBA in finance and an MA in French literature, worked in marketing for a number of Fortune 100 companies, including IBM and the Dow Jones Company. These days, you'll find Martine teaching students remotely by Zoom at the School of Business of the College of New Jersey. And when she's not teaching, she's dreaming about culinary travel. Martine has traveled to over 50 countries and began group travel tours over 30 years ago. With that much travel experience, of course, she's had her fair share of canceled trains and lost luggage and flight cancellations and changes. Martine tells me she discovered her first gray hair in Provence while leading a group of 16 to 18-year-olds on a 6-week tour through the region. Now her tours are limited to small groups, a maximum of 6, with a focus on local food and culture. So Martine, I thought I'd ask you a few questions about Goût et Voyage, and then we'll dive into the rest.
Terrific.
So tell us about your company.
So Goût et Voyage was started in 2014, based upon my love of travel, of course, and the belief that there was a subset of the travel population who wanted to travel and experience the world the way I like to, in an intimate, slow travel, if there is such a thing, type of experience with like-minded travel companions. I wanted to offer the ease of a group tour, an experienced multilingual guide, someone who knew all the secret places, offering no hassles with booking, and none of the trappings, if you will, of a larger group tour. So no tour buses, no rushing to get to the next stop, etc. So all of that really informed my vision on how to start the company. And in fact, that population does exist. And I'm pleased and actually humbled that more than 30% of my clients rebook with us within 2 years. And so now, in addition to our signature Taste of Provence tour, as you mentioned, we also offer a Taste of Umbria in Italy, and starting next year, a Taste of Porto in Portugal.
Wow, that's fantastic. And what motivates you to create small group tours?
So as I mentioned, I really wanted to create Goût et Voyage to reflect the way that I like to travel. So I like to travel off-peak season. I don't like to travel in a crowd. I don't like trips that nickel and dime you, which is why all of our trips are all-inclusive, and I really mean all-inclusive. There aren't any single supplements. And I wanted to create a travel experience that felt like traveling with a group of friends. And in fact, even if you start the trip not knowing anybody, you'll be friends within 2 days. And it's really, a number of my clients have formed long-lasting friendships after the trip that they took with people they met on the tour. And I love that. That's terrific.
Yeah, that's great. And how do you put together an itinerary?
So food, obviously, and cooking and wine are big parts of our itinerary, but I also like to include experiences that will surprise and delight my clients. So over the years, I've developed a network of chefs, of vintners, of wineries, of restaurants, craft people, and more that allow me to mix it up a bit every year, but still keep the overall itinerary the same. And, you know, we may have a surprise picnic at a winery, or we may catch an evening of jazz in a small town, or we may try our hand at a local craft. And those things change every year depending upon availability and if we happen to hit a festival or we happen to hit the lavender or so forth.
Right. Yeah. And how would you describe your Taste of Provence tour?
So the tour is always 8 days, 7 nights, and it's a full 8 days. I always say that because a lot of tours on the 8th day, it's breakfast and goodbye, but we really have a full day. So we tell people don't book any return travel before 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because we will be doing things on the 8th day. So we always have 2 or 3 hands-on cooking classes with local chefs in their homes, and clients love it because it's an opportunity to see how people actually live. And we've been fortunate in that several of our chefs have really magnificent mas homes, and it's really sort of stepping into another world, which is always a nice change. We spend a full day in the Côte du Rhône, visiting a variety of wineries, meeting the vintners, learning about the terroir, and of course honing our tasting skills. And there are so many charming hilltop and perched villages in Provence, so we take a leisurely tour of several of those villages, several of my favorites, for a full day. And I always like to include the spectacular Saint-Lumière, the Sound and Light Show at the Carrière de Lumière, which blows people's minds. If you've never been there, it really is an experience. And when I tell my clients we're going to a Sound and Light Show, they usually, and then they walk in and their minds are blown. So it's truly an amazing experience. And then we have a day in Avignon or in Arles or in Aix, typically with a foodie walking tour. And then everybody loves the market. So whether it's the market at Saint-Rémy, or it's the market in Louvain, or it's the market in Apt or l'Île-sur-Sorgue, there's always time for the market, and always time for leisure time for either shopping for people who really are into that, or just R&R by the pool for a few hours, sometimes with a glass of wine and sometimes with a good book and a glass of wine.
And you normally stay in your 8 days in 2 or 3 places, right?
1.
Just one.
We always stay in one, and that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I really like the fact that we stay in one place, because that gives people the opportunity to really get the rhythm of a place, and there's no pack, unpack, 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 wasted time. And we stay in Saint-Rémy, and you know, by day 3, people feel very familiar to walk into town by themselves, or say, if we're all in town, say, you know what, I'll meet you all back at the hotel. I feel comfortable walking back by myself. So really staying in one place, I think, furthers that slow travel and that relaxing trip that I try to create.
That's a nice model too, because then you're not sort of, I'll say, wasting time on the transfer day and all of that sort of thing. So that's great. Right. And what, in your view, makes a tour lead, a tour guide, invaluable? So
I think from my perspective, I strive to take out as much of the stress and uncertainty of travel as I can. You can't predict when a train's going to be delayed, a plane's going to be delayed, or there's going to be a transit strike. But I really try to take out as much of that stress as possible and really try to provide the highest level of comfort, quality, and fun as possible. And I seriously want my clients to have a worry-free, memorable trip and the best time possible.
Perfect. Sounds like a great holiday.
It is.
And again, in your opinion, are there any downsides to small group travel?
Well, I think if you like being in a crowd, being anonymous, if you feel more comfortable in larger restaurants or staying in a larger, perhaps chain type of hotel, if you really want your every moment to be programmed, then I suppose a small group tour really isn't for you. And there are people who want that. They try, it's 8 days. They want to have as much, every one of their hours as possibly programmed as possible. So if that's the case, probably a small group
isn't the right fit. Yeah. And you talked about this a little bit, but how do you select your partners? So hotels, restaurants, chefs, drivers?
Very carefully.
Mm.
So I select partners who are passionate about the region and about customer service as much as I am. And I seek out locals primarily who really love what they do and know the region and know their craft or their cuisine and so forth. Actually, one of the chefs I use is he does not speak English. And so he's a master chef, and I translate, and it's in his house, and it's a really fun experience. And that's something very different.
No kidding. Yeah. Now, you were going to, and probably still are, launching well, let me put it this way. You were launching a tour for around the holidays in Provence this year. And this year, of course, has caught us all by surprise, but maybe you could just speak about that tour, and
Sure.
if possible, an update on what's
Sure.
happening.
So as you know, the holiday season in Provence is something very special. And we would include our cooking classes. Of course, the meals we prepare are a lot more warming, a lot more seasonal type of dishes. Weather permitting, we might hunt for truffles and then know how to prepare truffles in our meal and then enjoy truffles with some champagne. The Christmas markets are in full swing, and they provide a very different way to experience the cities and the towns. And I love to introduce clients to the age-old craft of Santon, and to provide the opportunity for them to meet the Santonniers, the Santon makers, at work, either in their atelier or at the Santon fair. And so it's a very different ambiance, obviously a lot less crowded, a lot slower again, but still very magical.
Very.
And we're hopeful, but we don't know.
Right. Yeah. So on that subject of we don't know, obviously this year caught us all by surprise. You recently did a survey on the appetite for travel. Can you tell us some of the results?
Well, we based our survey on about 150 and had about 150 respondents. There were still people responding, but it was interesting to note that more than 30% of the people who answered said they would embark upon leisure travel now, obviously with some caveats. And there 14% of the people said they would be willing to travel in the fourth quarter of this year, and 40% of those said that they would be willing to travel in 2021, which is cheering. I also was surprised to say that many of the leisure travels were also willing to accept some of the safety precautions and restrictions in order to satisfy their wanderlust. I mean, 90% of the people said they'd adhere to social distancing rules. 84% said they'd be willing to wear masks when visiting museums, monuments, and other attractions if necessary. A smaller percent, only 56%, said they would only travel if only outdoor, would travel, only 56% said they would travel if outdoor dining was the only dining option. So I think people, looking out are saying, well, yeah, but if it rains, I want to still be able to eat. So the fact that you can only eat outdoors was a little bit of a pullback there. And very surprisingly, an intrepid 18% of the respondents said they travel internationally, even with the possibility of being quarantined in the foreign country or when they return to the home country. So I think overall, most of the travelers are hoping for a vaccine and or a therapeutic or cure in order to feel comfortable. And I think the signs are positive for later this year and early 2021. I mean, let's be honest, it's really not much fun to travel while wearing a mask and having to do all of those restrictions.
Exactly. And regardless, going forward, vaccine or therapeutics or whatever, we probably are in a slightly changed world. So what precautions do you think you'll put in place for your guests in the future?
So we would certainly verify that the hotels, the restaurants, and the chefs have the appropriate safety and cleanliness procedures in place. I mean, all of them are really eager to welcome guests as soon as possible. And I'm really confident that they've minimized as many of the risks as possible, and they'll do everything to ensure a safe and enjoyable trip.
Right. And are you going to travel this summer?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have travel plans this summer, though that various countries and state specific regulations seem to change by the minute. And it makes it very difficult to plan ahead. Even we're in the state of Pennsylvania right now, our county has just moved to green, which means that restaurants are open indoors at 50% capacity and outdoors, but beaches and towns still have local restrictions. One of my favorite beach towns is Spring Lake, and now they're allowing people to park on the street, but you can't get a badge to get on the beach. So there you go. So there's a lot of restrictions, and so right now I have no travel plans. Alas.
Yeah, we're definitely all waiting for some kind of green light, I think, to say that it's not only is it safe to travel or safer to travel with precautions, but that you're not going to get caught. So you're not going to drive somewhere for the weekend and then have to come back and turn around. So we'll see.
Indeed.
So I know that you love food and culinary trends and all those things. What are you cooking these days?
So I've been cooking my way through Melissa Clark's newest cookbook, Dinner in French. The recipes are great. And I actually love the egg section, which is the first one, but I've made several of her other recipes. And as I said, I'm cooking my way through it, and that's a lot of fun. And then I love salads. So I've been playing with different twists on seasonal favorites, going to the farmer's market and seeing whatever looks terrific. That's sort of the Mediterranean way. That's
great. Well, thank you, Martine. That's the end of my questions. And next time we meet, I hope it'll be with that glass of rosé at some restaurant.
I hope so.
Or at that foodie tour in Marseille that we promised. But
oh, yes, that's right.